We know the Egyptians were aware of rain in Punt raises the Nile in Egypt. What does it mean? If the Punt is a coastal area of Eritrea or Sudan, if rain is rain, then it will be the rain or run of the Red Sea. Whereas the Tigray, Merab, and Nile are the major tributaries to the Nile in Egypt. So rain in Punt means raise the river in Nile in part of Egypt. What does it mean? This is another clue. The other is the Egyptians were access to Punt by two directions. One by dry land from Nubia up to the Ethiopia and other areas. When the Nubians become powerful, especially from the middle 3rd century millennium, BC, the Nubians become powerful civilized societies in the Nile Valley. Then sometimes they were in control. Then they served as intermediary, or they accept goods from Punt, they sent to the Egyptians. So all this provide probability of Tigray being located either in the core area of the Punt or as trade route, because most of the items that were also exported to Punt were already documented in the highlands of Eritrea, modern Tigray, or northwestern Ethiopia. Then we have these informations. Then there is probability of being part of Punt or on the location of what the land of Punt. But what I want to say here is, same time, we have archaeological, legendary, linguistic, cultural evidences that support the close cultural contact between the two regions concerning in our locality, we know. But we are too late to demonstrate or organize conference regarding on Punt. Where is the location of Punt? We need to develop conference and collaborative work, especially in Tigray universities and with other international universities. We know the history of Punt is very interesting in the ancient world. For the Egyptians was also important place, not only from commercial perspective, it was also from religious perspective. And sometimes some evidences say that they are descendants from that one. And that's why they say that land of gods, land of gods. So we need to work together on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. So it was very interesting topic. It's all about among the ancient history of this region. The Punt, the land of the Punt, was among the ancient civilization center, mainly in present Tigray. So he raised many important issues, particularly from the source of Egyptian hieroglyphics, as well as the legends and material nearby Aksum University. So thank you so much again, please. Please, Deacon Gabra.
Okay, thank you, presenters, the three presenters. Now, questions, maybe comments of the audience. It's up to the audience now. And,
okay, thank you. First, I would like to welcome back Mr. Need, Dr. Need, Dr. Gabra. First, my question for Dr. Need is, your discussion is about the tomb of State Park. That's the elite tomb. Can we get information about the social, the lower class social system? Secondly, the tomb is, I think, where So from archaeological or from many evidences, we have this Northern Africa, especially around present Tigray, known by Punt, especially in most part in Aksum. We have also some inscriptions about Ethiopia, but that means that Ethiopia is synonym with the current Ethiopia. So I think, can we reconstruct about the current Ethiopia from ancient? I prefer to use, rather than Ethiopia, it's better to say Aksum. Because Aksumite kings themselves, they say that king of Aksum. So I think I need to be comfortable by that.
Any other more?
Yeah, so actually this is a good question. This is one of the major archaeological issues that we deal with. How do we observe elite classes? How do we observe other classes of the archaeological record? Traditionally, there has been an understanding, when you look at graves, we think that because the richer person has more resources, they're usually building the bigger graves, right? This was a little bit disproved, because it depends on interest. When we look at many modern cultures, this study was done in England. They found that there are groups that they don't have money. There are ethnic groups that don't have money, but they spend more money that they don't have on the graves than the richer people. This is because for the graves, for them, they are the ceremonial activity. This is where people are meeting. It is important in the public performance for their culture, right? So, this is sort of the debate. For the people that have interpreted in the Aksum stela part, as you said, we usually interpret them to be elite tombs based on the size of the stela, the size of the tombs themselves. Usually, when they're saying this argument, they're focusing on Mausoleum, East Tomb, the two biggest tombs, and they're focusing on the biggest stela, which in the stela park are the three-storied stela, the three shaped like houses, right? But if you go there, you know there are many stela across the park. So there's a question, do the smaller stela represent people that are less wealthy? In the traditional knowledge, people would say yes. So what I did was I tested the three different kinds of stela for the tombs. Even the tomb of brick arches, it doesn't really have a stela. And then there was one more tomb, the one I said that there was no skeletal material found. This was the last tomb that was excavated by Chittick. And he was excavating it, he found one body. Even the rituals that I'm speaking of, it was not performed on this body. Just they threw the body inside the grave, and that was it. And at this time, when Chittick was excavating, the Derg were coming in, so he had to escape. So that one was a little bit incomplete, but we do have an understanding of the main chamber. So we have three different kinds of tombs that we tested in the stela park. From the pottery, if we take the traditional idea that these are elite person, middle class person, less wealthy person of the stela park, what we can see from the pottery that it is not that the families are separate from each other. They are coming to ceremonies together, right? So even if we understand there is a must for family members to come to like baptism, to the different events we have, also there is must for community members to come if they are friends with you, if they are knowing you, they have to come. I think we observe this in the stela park. So generally, we can say that there is, based on traditional idea, there is some inequality we are seeing in the stela park. There's a lead person based on the stela size, the monuments, so forth. We have to have some doubt. This is an issue we don't fully understand. But the way that we are measuring, we are understanding that even if there is an unequal difference, they are understanding themselves as a community. Now, what may change this idea is, this is one cemetery. When we excavate, when we look at the Gudit stela field, when we look at the other cemeteries, and we think that, you know, the richer people in one part of town, the less rich people in another part of town, maybe our understandings would change. But so that's how we understand for that. And so for the robbing of the tombs, this is part of the issue, because Chittick has many things that he'll call robbers' tunnels. So the types of ritual that I'm speaking about, when the person goes back into the grave and they take the bones, many times this looks like robbing. That's why you have to look at the dates. That's why, so for example, some of the place where they go into the tomb, they blocked again with a new stone. This to me suggests it is not a robbery, because they don't even try to steal, they create a new ritual, basically, to close the tomb, right? So for me, this is probably not a robber. When I find, for example, there is a 17th century deposit in the mausoleum tomb, and that one has the foreign items that were not part of the original material there in that tomb. That one to me is the understanding of a robber's tunnel, right? That one has no contextual relationship with the tomb. So this is something that it becomes an issue, is trying to think what is the robber's tunnel and what is the rights of removing the bones, of continuing to engage with the graves. And many of the things that we think were robbed were from those tombs. Now, one way I try to control for this is that all the pottery samples I take, they were only from the primary layers. They were not from layers that were removed by the robbers. And from the bones, we observed a similar thing. We do have some issue where some of the medieval bones are coming into play, but generally speaking, we just have to make sure we are looking at the primary context to try to control for that issue.
Thank you. Others, please. Yes. Comments, maybe. Yes.
Yeah, you raised the issue of nomenclature of toponym or ethnonym in relation to Ethiopia and Aksum. In fact, you know, we can have a whole conference on this subject. You know, what I would say is, among archaeologists, or at least Orientalists and Ethiopianists, non-Ethiopian scholars, they give a late date for Aksum, AD, you know, from first century, second century, first century, you know, Aksum 1, Aksum 2, as our colleague has indicated, probably this is better relating to pottery as a designation. What I will say is that the history of Aksum, the name Aksum comes from Aksumawi. Aksumawi, he is the king of Ethiopia that lived in the 8th century BC. Okay? Now, Ethiopians lived long before. Ethiopians lived 1,000 years before. Ethiopia was, or we can call it many names, Kush, if we want to use the Semitic terminology. Ethiopia, Kush, was known by many names. The first name it was known by is recorded in history. It was named as Ori, from the king Ori, the land of Ori. Both Ethiopia and Egypt was named that, okay? Because the first king of Ethiopia was Ori. So this is recorded in Manetho from the 4th century BC. He says, talk about the Oraiti, okay? So that was the first name. The second name that Ethiopia was known by is in recorded history. It was known as Kam or Ham. The third name it was known by was Kush, the son of Ham. The next name it was known by was Habashi. Habashi is the son of Kush. After that, this is the 3rd century BC. After that, we come to 1,000 years until 1985 BC, as recorded history says, as Sergoi gives the date. Sergoi Haile Selassie, in his ancient Ethiopia, he gives the date of 1990 BC from a manuscript in the monastery of Abba Afsi, 1990 BC, for the coming of Aknahu Saba. Aknahu Saba, his name Aknahus, he was from South Arabia, he came to Ethiopia, he brought geese to Ethiopia. His name is recorded by Homer as Aknahus became Hellenized to Okeanos, or Wokianos today, Wokianos. The ocean was named from here. Homer explicitly said that Zeus went to Okeanos to visit the Ethiopians, to send a feast with them. So in that text, which is from the 8th century BC, it says that the land was named Okeanos, and the people were called Ethiopia. This is from the 8th century BC. So it gives two names there, an ethnological name and a topographical name. So Okeanos is after Habashi, or Habisha. Ethiopia was called Habisha then. 1,000 years later, it was called Oceanus. Then Oceanus's grandson or great-grandson was Ethiopis. Ethiopis, he finished reigning, according to all the Ethiopic sources, he finished reigning in 1800 BC. That is when he finished his reign. There were two Ethiopises. Within a century, there was Ethiopis Dagmar, Ethiopis Kedami, Ethiopis Dagmar. Okay, so Ethiopia is known by many names. Ethnographically, what we see is certain nations which had contact with Ethiopia called it by the name they had contact with, and other nations who had contact with the land, called it by other names. So, for example, the Semitic, most of the Semitics, like for example the Hebrews, they called it Cush. All right, in Babylon they called it Cush, you know, in Aramaic. But in South Arabian they call it Habashi, which is from an earlier king, or the Habisha. The South Arabians are explicit that Habashi or Habisha is not South Arabian, but they are Ethiopian. The South Arabians, we need to ask them explicitly. So different nations know Ethiopia by different names who they have contact, and we see this all around the world. If we go to Germany, as just like a final example, Germany is known by the Spanish as Alemania. They are known by themselves as the Deutsch. They are known by some other nations as Nimis. They are known by the Romans as Germans. They are known by many different names depending on the time of contact. And I would say a final actual point is if we study national appellations, when nations were named, the majority of nations were named before around 1700 BC is when the nations were named fully from ethnological sources. This is many nations around the world because I've done a great study on it, I've lectured on it many times. So I hope this answers your question.
Do you have anything? All right. We have also students. There are students, so you can provide if you have any comment also.
Okay, thank you. I would appreciate your presentation, even though I didn't, just follow the whole presentation, but as a, after the profession, I would be happy if I am hearing, what's the new finding from, your presentation, from the context of new knowledge or something like that. What's new here? Yes, for three of you.
So I'll go first. So when we begin, Dr. McConan was speaking about the international collaboration and how we don't have borders for our collaboration. And this is something we think about when we design our projects. We have to think also for the audience here, also for the audiences in America, for the many, many audiences. And what becomes new and what becomes important is our project is designed to target all of these audiences, right? So for what is new, I think that is important for Tigray is our understanding in the ability to reconstruct the ritual traditions in the Stela Park, Malat, what kind of things they were, what kind of activities they were actually involved in and doing, being able to reconstruct that and the burial rites. The second thing that I think is important as a general message is that these practices, they continue through time. You know, today the Stela people understand as heritage, as emblem. There is something, you know, everyone is taking wedding photos there, everyone is coming there, they feel something proud, right? They were made for this reason. They were made because when one of the family members died, they want the community to remember them. So when we are going to the Stela, when we are visiting the Stela, when we accept that they are an important part of the heritage, we are doing what the ancestral people in Aksum, what they are asking for us. Still, we are fulfilling our must for them. I think that is the important local message. Now, because in our tradition we are more anthropological in America, we also, in the practicality of research, when we write a grant, we must solve a world issue, right? So the things we discover in Aksum, they must provide some important understanding for the world. My idea for how Aksum helps us know world knowledge is the issue of what is tradition and what is modern. As I explained, I was speaking in the beginning that today we think the economy, the globalization, modernity, this is destroy tradition, this is destroy family life. And even I gave the example of the cemeteries in America. We have traditions that was close to like Tzavos or Tazkars and they vanish, right? But in Aksum, that does not happen. The people, they keep the family strong, they keep the community strong, and even in the globalized time, they are using all of their resources to make the traditions even stronger. They make the monuments bigger, they start using the new rituals in the Stela Park that everyone can see. Everyone going to my shum is going to see the Stela, is going to see the cemetery. They arrange the whole city, right? That is the center, my shum, Stela Park, that is the center of the city at this time. They arrange the whole city around their tradition. So in this way, in the world understanding, Aksum shows for us that the tradition in the modern world, they are not always battling. The globalization, they are not always battling. That we can keep our tradition through time, that there is a way to accomplish this, that this battle is false. And this is something that if you're coming from another country, like I'm coming from Punjab in India, when I go to America, I'm facing these issues. When I look to Aksum, I feel encouraged, you know? And even in America, there's many students I have from many countries. When you teach them this lesson, they feel encouraged. They don't feel that they are giving up their culture. So this is what I say is the important finding for the world audience.
Thank you. Next.
Yes, so new findings, I would say there are a number, geographical, archaeological, historical. The site in Nadia, first of all, by the grace of God, I was able to identify from a manuscript this geographical location. In the Latin manuscript, it says the best example of the variant of the name is Nada-or. The proper pronunciation, it says Nada-or. The proper pronunciation, Nadia. Okay? So there are many variants. I interviewed people. I interviewed one scholar, Margita Gabra Marian, who has just left us, departed to Samai a couple years ago. Now he was the one who translated the Gedli Hawari in Giz and Amharic. So it was him who I principally interviewed, and he told me about, he heard one papas one time who said that St. Matthew came to the northern region, and I asked him, I pressed him where it is, and he said it was not there. And from he said that, I knew exactly which variant was wrong and which was correct. And I came on expedition, and I came to Aksum, and I walked to Nadia for 4 days, the whole region, non-stop until I discovered all the things related to Kudus Mateos there. Geographically, this is cited as the first century city, the first century Ethiopian city. So Aksum wasn't the first, it was the city in the first century. And we don't have Aksum mentioned in the first century until the time of Zeskulis, who is from 100 years later, right? So that's when Aksum is first mentioned after the text that we're dealing with. In the text that we're dealing with, it mentions seven kings, kings of kings, emperors and empresses, 7. So for basically the whole of the first century, this text deals with. It stops in 88 AD. The text begins in Arda, Amet Mehere. So the text covers 48 years of Ethiopian history. Okay, so it is very important. And so then that is the geography and the history. The archaeology of the site not only discovered the original site of the church